I'm Patrick Byers, Horticulture Field Specialist with University of Missouri Extension, and I'm excited to be joining Juan Cabrera, also a Horticulture Field Specialist with University of Missouri Extension, for a discussion of developing a spray program for fruit crops. An important tool for Missouri farmers who are growing fruit crops to use in developing a spray program is the Midwest Fruit Pest Management Guide. Let's spend just a few minutes talking about the Fruit Pest Management Guide. The Midwest Fruit Pest Management Guide is a collaborative effort of fruit specialists at a number of land-grant universities across the Midwest. This guide is revised every 2 years in its print form. The online version is continuously revised, and the Midwest Fruit Pest Management Guide is available as a free download at the website noted here on the slide. The Midwest Fruit Pest Management Guide includes fruit pest management recommendations for apple, pear, cherry, peach, plum, grape, blueberry, raspberry and blackberry, and strawberry. The guide is particularly useful because for each of these fruit crops, it follows the crop through the season, from the beginning of growth during the dormant stage, all the way through harvest, post-harvest, and moving into the fall. And the fruit pest management recommendations are based upon growth stage. The Midwest Fruit Pest Management Guide includes management recommendations for diseases, insects, and other arthropods, weeds, and other pests such as voles, for example. The Pest Management Guide goes through the different crop stages and points out which pests are particularly significant at those different growth stages. And then it includes the pest management recommendations for the pests at that particular growth stage. There is additional information in the Midwest Fruit Pest Management Guide, information on the safe handling of pesticides, the use of pesticides in high tunnels or greenhouses, determining spray volume and rate, calibrating your spray equipment, the use of spray adjuvants, and the use of tank mixes and any issues related to compatibility among the sprays within a tank mix.
Hello, I am Juan Cabrera, Field Specialist in Horticulture for MU Extension. Now, before moving on, we had to talk about restricted use pesticides. For restricted use pesticides, you need to be certified as a private applicator because being certified means that you're able to understand the following. The first one is that you know how to read the label. Remember, the label is the legal binding contract to make sure that you're using this product responsibly. The purpose of the label is to give you proper directions that will allow maximum product benefit while minimizing the risks to the human health and the environment. Being certified also means that you're aware of the safety factors with regards to how to properly handle pesticides, the potential environmental concerns with pesticides, that you're able to know and identify what are the pests that you may encounter with your crop, and this is the focus of what I'm going to talk about later, that you are responsible with the use of pesticides, that you know what is the proper equipment that you need to apply the pesticides, that you know what the adequate application methods are, and what are the state and federal regulations with the use of the pesticides. You need to keep records when using pesticides. These are required by the EPA. In case there's an accident or an investigation, this is the first place where they're going to come looking for. You need to be able to give them records that show what materials you used, what were the application rates, the dates, the areas that you treated, and what growth stages of the crops were treated, and what were and notes on the weather condition. With that said, before developing a spray schedule, you need to familiarize yourself with the growth stages of your crop. Katie Kambler did a video about this in the previous issue of the newsletter, and you can check that in the video description below. You can pause the video right now if you need time to copy that link. Right, so why would you like to get familiarized with the different growth stages? The reason why is because certain pathogens target specific tissues and are most active during specific growth stages. In most cases, you want to protect the plants from initial infection. And that's why with proper timing and application, you can lower, notice, I'm not saying eradicate, you can lower the disease progress to a point that you can have a marketable fruit and make a profit. Here are some examples of diseases that you need to control at different growth stages. For example, look at Fireblight. there's an asterisk there, and that's there because you need to make applications during the dormant season if you had a bad Fireblight season the previous years. Moving on to the other growth stages of the apple development. Now, from bloom till the first and second cover, you need to have 7 to 10 days spray intervals. But also, the set of diseases that you need to control for are different from the set of diseases that were present in the previous growth stages. Now, let's look at some disease management practices. The first line of defense is planting resistant varieties. If you're establishing an orchard or if you're doing replanting, it is important to start with disease-resistant varieties on rootstocks. For example, for scab disease, we know that Liberty and Gold Rush are resistant varieties, whereas Gala and Jonah Gold varieties are very susceptible to scab. The environment plays a crucial role in disease incidence. If you have the right environment, you lower the risks of having disease develop in your orchard. So that's why it is important to provide an adequate environment for your crop. For example, pruning improves airflow, which lowers the excess humidity around the leaves. And ultimately, you end up with lower incidence of powdery mildew. Therefore, you're gonna need to spray less for powdery mildew. Proper spacing also allows for good airflow, and that's why it is important that when you're establishing an orchard that you follow the directions and the recommendations in terms of spacing. Sanitation is another step. You need to prune damaged or diseased branches and also cleaning up debris from your orchard and taking that off the orchard. And finally, you need to have a spray schedule that will protect you from initial infection in case a pathogen can come from a source that you were not accounting for. And now Patrick is going to show you how to select fungicides to control a specific disease.
Now let's drill down and talk about management of a particular apple disease, the disease Fireblight. Fireblight is a bacterial disease that's particularly damaging to apple trees in Missouri. As is the case with every disease, there are critical control points. And from the standpoint of Fireblight, these are the growth stages of dormant to silvertip, tight cluster to pink, apple bloom, and then petal fall. Also included in the Midwest Fruit Pest Management Guide are special notes related to Fireblight. And if you check out the sections of the spray guide that correspond to these critical control points, you'll find more information on Fireblight management. Now let's take a look at the pesticides that are recommended for management of apple Fireblight. First of all, at the dormant to silvertip growth stage, here is the format for the recommendations that is in the Midwest Fruit Pest Management Guide. The first column, the product formulation and the active ingredient. There'll oftentimes be additional information in this particular column as well. The second column, the FRAC code. FRAC is an acronym. It stands for Fungicide Resistance Action Committee. The FRAC code is an attempt to place fungicides with similar modes of action, similar ways that they control pests within similar groups. And the reason for this is that there is good evidence that as resistance develops to a particular fungicide within a FRAC code, then it's likely that the other fungicides within that FRAC code will also no longer be effective at controlling a particular problem. So in other words, FRAC codes are important to know because they help you develop a rotation among different spray products in a spray program. For example, you don't want to use a fungicide with the same FRAC code time after time after time. Alternate with fungicides that have different FRAC codes. That's an important aspect of managing the development of resistance to fungicides. The next group of columns relate to the diseases that are problems at this particular growth stage. In this case, again, dormant to silvertip. And then we have what are called the PHI and the REI. PHI stands for pre-harvest interval. This is the period of time that you have to allow between when the spray is applied and when the fruit crop is harvested. The REI is the re-entry interval. This is the period of time from when the spray is applied and dries on the crop to when workers can safely re-enter that orchard. So for example, if we look at Bordeaux mixture 8-8-10, we can see that it has the FRAC code M. It's labeled for controlling fire blight at 8 pounds per acre. There is no pre-harvest interval, and the re-entry interval is 24 hours. Now let's take a look at tight cluster to pink. Again, the Midwest Fruit Pest Management Guide entry for fire blight management of tight cluster to pink includes the material apogee. Now, if we look at the FRAC code, we notice that it's PGR. This is the abbreviation for plant growth regulator. In fact, apogee helps manage fire blight by slowing down the terminal growth of apple trees, making them less susceptible to the disease. We notice that the rate to apply at this point for fire blight management is 9 to 36 ounces per acre. Now we'll also notice an E. That E is a rating for the effectiveness of a particular fungicide or other pest management chemical. In this case, E stands for excellent. So apogee is a good choice for managing fire blight during tight cluster to pink. Again, we'll notice the REI is 12 hours, the PHI is 45 days. There's also a final column, which is the maximum amount that may be applied per acre and the maximum applications that may be made during a single growing season. So in the case of apogee, 99 ounces per acre is the maximum amount that can be applied. This is calculated by adding up all of the different applications of apogee that might be made in a season. And that total amount per acre must be less than 99 ounces. Now, if we look at apple bloom and apple petal fall, the same program applies to both critical points, both growth stages. And we'll notice that we have a number of pest management chemicals that are available for use at apple bloom and apple petal fall. These include agromycin 17, active ingredient streptomycin sulfate, casium 2L. Kasugamycin is the active ingredient in this particular pest management chemical, and then MicaShield, which is oxytetracycline. Now, again, noticing the FRAC codes, they have different FRAC codes: agromycin 25, casium 24, and MicaShield 41. All three are labeled for fire blight. We can see the different rates there. We can also see the ratings. Notice that agromycin is rated as E for excellent, casium G for good, and MicaShield F to G, which is fair to good. So again, we can keep this in mind as we're developing a spray program for fire blight during apple bloom and apple petal fall. But there's a bit of a cautionary note here. We'll notice that after the E, there is a small r in parentheses. This means that the bacteria that causes fire blight has developed resistance to agromycin 17. And if we have resistant strains present in an orchard, then agromycin 17 will no longer control fire blight in that setting. We can look over at the REI and the PHI. In the case of agromycin, 12 hours for REI, 50 days for pre-harvest interval. If you have any questions related to developing a spray program, reach out to the horticulture field specialist that is assigned to the county of your residence or your farm. Find the county in which you're located, find the contact information for the field specialist, and reach out. If you live in an area where there is no field specialist currently assigned, find the field specialist closest to you and reach out. I'm sure they'll be happy to help.